What's up, everyone? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I got another album review for you. Now, obviously, Tool was the biggest release that we've done, and it's been great so far. But there were other releases as well, much like Witch Vomit, that we wanted to cover. And another one that came out that I wanted to do was the new Entombed AD, Bowels of the Earth. This also came out on August 30th on Century Media Records, and this is the band's third album, technically, if you're not including their history with Entombed, which gets confusing. Namely, it was LG wanted to continue on with Entombed, but due to legal reasons had to change it to Entombed AD, and thus it's technically a different band, but at the same time it's very much in the vein of Entombed at multiple points of their career. So this album kicks off with a nice thrashy barn burner, Torment Remains, and it pretty much sets the pace for the album. These tracks generally range from more upbeat, sort of thrashy stuff, and lots of D-beat punk throughout. It's really fucking good. The first three tracks in particular, Torment Remains, Elimination, and Hell Is My Home, are absolute bangers. Right from the get-go, these three tracks are great. Torment Remains is very short, quick, sets the pace, nice, angry, old-school death metal feel to it, reminiscent of earlier Entombed, and maybe even some Obituary and Jungle Rot along the way. Elimination throws in some interesting blast beats and some kind of off-time stuff in there too, and ultimately comes out as one of the heavier tracks on there, and pretty solid. Hell Is My Home is probably my favorite track on here because it is just catchy as fuck. Right away, you're greeted with an awesome hook on the verse line. It's just a simple, chuggy, thrashy riff, and it carries the song beautifully. You just want to headbang until your head falls off your fucking shoulders. Great chorus. It has a nice gang vocal approach to the repetition of the title in between different verses, and it just works. It's a great effect. You almost want to just throw your fist up in the air and chant along with them that hell is your home. From there, it kind of takes an interesting turn to a little bit more of a mid-tempo song that's more reminiscent of maybe Amon Amarth mixed with a bit of Bolt Thrower. Doesn't have much of a chorus or even pre-chorus to it. The verses, I think, are really, really good, nice and chuggy, very driving. The chorus didn't really lend itself very well, and it was one of my issues with this. Is LG is great when he's growling. He has a good low register, he has a good mid register, but his attempts to growl in key are kind of hit or miss. This one was definitely a bit of a miss, and it really didn't do much for the song personally. What really did it for me on this song, though, was the bridge definitely has echoes of traditional heavy metal, lots of cool guitar harmonies and such, and it has a very old school feel, much like Iron Maiden or Angel Witch, or even with current bands like Haunt and Spirit Adrift. Really, really, really good stuff. I dug the hell out of that part. Track itself, altogether, is just kind of okay. Now, one of my favorites on here was the flat-out fun track that is Bourbon Nightmare. It opens up with a gentleman yelling in Spanish in what seems like a cantina bar, which made me think maybe this is a tequila nightmare rather than a bourbon nightmare. Pretty sure if you get hammered on either one of those, yeah, you might end up with a nightmare of a hangover the next day. This is a pure, fun, kind of D-beat punk death metal song that is just a mosher, and it's just all about fun. Really cool slide guitar solo in it. Just kind of adds to the grimy, dirty, fucking fun feel of this one. Instantly hooked on this one. I loved it. I've jammed it multiple times. It's just a fun banger. Now, the next track, Fit for a King, was the first one I heard that was going to be on this album. It was released as a single. And this one, you can tell there's some different mixing issues on this one. And it's some that pop up on different points in the album. This one, the bass seems really forward in the mix rather than the guitars. The guitars seem pushed back. And the guitars on this are kind of interesting in the sense that both guitars seem like they have their own tone. Like, overall, the tone is very close to early Entombed. Probably the closest Entombed AD has been to that classic HM2 sound. But one guitar sounds very close to that, but more on the spectrum of like a band like Grave, where it's very crunchy too. And the other one is more their token sludgier sound, which has been on the previous two Entombed AD albums. So together they sound really interesting, but when they isolate them, you can kind of hear those inconsistencies. It's like, I mean, together it works, but maybe not on their own. And some of the lead tones are different on here. Like sometimes they sound real crisp and real nice, and then sometimes they sound just kind of lackluster and very thin. So some mixing issues on there, and that really starts to pop out around that track. Now, one of my favorites on here was Through the Eyes of Gods. I thought that one was probably the closest Entombed AD has been to that classic left-hand path sound that they pioneered all those years ago. This one is straight up Swedish death metal. Really not a lot of death and roll elements. They just went for the fucking gut on this one, and I really dug it. One of my favorite tracks on this album. And we go into a fun cover. I'll Never Get Out of This World Alive, originally done by Hank Williams. Now, you wouldn't guess that if you listen to the song because it sounds like straight up Entombed AD, so they took something that was fiercely different than what they play and turned it into a fun reimagining of the song, and it's just this fucking kick-ass, kind of thrashy, D-beat, punkish fucking song, and it's just great. It's fucking awesome. I love it. You know, it may not be the proper tribute. I'm pretty sure Hank Sr. and Hank 2 might not care for it, but I'm pretty sure Hank 3 would. So, I dug it. I thought it was pretty cool. And then we move it into the only song that's really actually a little bit slower, To Eternal Night, which is good. I like to hear them do a little more mid-tempo stuff that's a little bit doomier, etc. Unfortunately, this is where LG's vocals come in, and he tries to be more tuneful, growling key, and it really just does not come off very catchy, at least to me. This has some interesting choir effects that are in there in terms of the vocals, just kind of layering it, and it just seems like too much for an album that's, you know, mostly just very raw, stripped down, and gritty. This one just seemed like, we're pushing it a little bit here. It's a little too grandiose for what you were going for. And then they kind of doubled down on the covers by doing a Motorhead cover of Back to the Funny Farm, which is a more obscure cover, and I like the fact they chose a more obscure song rather than just like, hey, we're going to do Ace of Spades or Orgasmatron, like one that's been done a million times over. But the fact that they already had a absolutely killer cover on here makes it seem like this one was tacked on and kind of unnecessary. So all in all, I'm going to give this one 3.5 stars. I think it's probably their best one as Entombed AD. Still doesn't quite live up to the benchmark of those earlier albums that I love so much, and inevitably you end up comparing a band's current works to their previous works. And as far as Entombed AD goes, this is their best work. I really dig this one. It brought back a lot of elements of their earlier sound and still balanced it out with a lot of stuff that they're currently doing. It's a fun album. It's, you know, mostly just a raw, stripped down, old school death metal album, and that's the kind of shit I fucking absolutely love. So it definitely got me there. So, if you liked the review, give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, sub. We do shit like this all the time. Catch you later.